Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And this evening I'm joined by Jessica. So hello, Jessica.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time because you're in Brisbane right now.
I'm in New Zealand, so I'm in the
New Zealand.
Coromandel Peninsula, which is just near Auckland.
Oh, gosh. I think I'm getting you confused with a lady that was in Brisbane that I interviewed earlier in the week because it's all got a bit crazy recently. I'm so sorry. New Zealand, yes, of course. Um, right, I'm going to say what I say at the beginning of most videos, and that I'm just going to get out of the way and let you tell your story. So over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Polly, for having me. And the story that I wanted to share today is about depression. So since I think I was about 8 years old, I was trying to remember how old I was. I put the number 8 on it. So I remember when I was 8 years old, I had this idea that I wanted to wake up in the mornings feeling inspired and excited about my day. So I didn't know quite whether I wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or a singer. All I knew was I wanted the kind of life I felt excited to wake up to.
Okay.
And when reflecting on why I had this strong urge to have this experience in my life, I think it was because at the time life didn't feel like that. My parents got a divorce when I was 3 years old, and although divorce is so common these days, I think it leaves an impression on us, even on the subconscious or unconscious level. At this early age, I probably didn't really know what was going on, but it had left an impression.
Mm-hmm.
And I have depression running through my family. So I experienced my mother going through depression and I witnessed that. And so, of course, this also affected me.
Sure.
Many times I felt that when waking up in the morning, having to go to school, there was a certain anxiety that would accompany me. I was pretty good at school. On the outside, it looked like I was this gentle kid. I had good grades, great friends. So on the outside, you would have thought, oh, everything's good. Everything's all right.
Right.
On the inside, it looked different. So I had these sort of, this fear, this anxiety oftentimes. And I remember quite often lying in bed under my blanket and just crying because I felt sad. I heard my mother and her new partner fighting in the background. So it caused a lot of distress in me at the time. And nevertheless, I was pretty good at school. I pushed myself. I had my good grades, and I had a lot of activities with friends. So I think to a certain extent that that saved me a bit to still have a positive outlook on life. And when I was fast forward a couple of years, when I was a teenager, I had my first depressive episode myself for the very first time.
Right.
And I still remember the moment sitting in the classroom, and I felt this current going through my body. It felt literally like a current going through my body. And as if you pull a curtain, all of a sudden everything turned gray. I had this real sense of hopelessness about life. And also I had this sense that I'm never, ever going to be happy again. I'm never going to be happy again. So this was sort of the underlying feeling that was there. The depression lasted a couple of months. My only consolidation, if you can call it that, was that my mother really knew what I was experiencing.
Right.
Because for someone who's never experienced depression before, it might just seem like you're having a bad day, but that's very far from the actual experience. It feels very different. And so I had this feeling only someone who's experienced this can know how hopeless and desperate it feels.
Right.
And so there was really nothing that could cheer me up. Nothing external could really cheer me up. The only thing I looked forward to in my day was going to bed at night and going back to sleep, sort of disappearing, right? But then the problem with that is that the next morning you wake up with that same sense of despair, right? So the depression eventually subsided. And what I didn't know at the time was that it would return. And so when the pressure was on later, when I was writing my thesis, I had another episode. So what actually happened, I didn't know at the time I was heading into another depression. But as I was writing my thesis, pushing myself again mentally, I was pushing myself quite hard during this time. And I also couldn't stop my mind from thinking way too much. So I knew there was a lot of thought going on, a lot of worry going on. And I started waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning with this sense of anxiety. I was like right awake. I probably had adrenaline or cortisol. I don't know what it was, something running through my system.
Yeah.
And my head was like, my mind was racing. And I had this real physical sensation that my abdomen was so tight. It was hard like a rock. I could hardly breathe into my abdomen.
Wow.
And so my day started really early because I couldn't get myself back to sleep. And my professor, who was overlooking my work, he knew something was up. He could sense that something was up. And I told him a little bit about what I was going through. And he said, well, my dear, you have a burnout. And so I started to realize that, yes, I feel extremely exhausted, extremely overwhelmed. And I had just flamed myself out, really.
Right.
So I was kind of coping. I had a hard time facing my day, but I kept pushing on because I wanted to finish this thesis, and I did what I could to the best of my abilities. But it weren't easy days because my body was kind of working against me. My body and my mind were working against me.
Right.
And I started counseling. I started seeing a counselor, and I also started to get back into yoga.
Okay.
And I noticed that whenever I came out of class, I felt really light. I had for 1 or 2 hours just stopped brooding about my diploma. And I also felt almost free of problems after class. So it was a really good feeling. And I noticed, wow, there's something to yoga, like something there is helping me at the moment big time. But similar to what I've experienced before, the next morning, the old self was back. So the next morning, I would have that same trouble to get out of bed, to face my day, to do what I needed to do.
Right.
And so the burnout was followed by 6 months of another depressive episode, which oftentimes burnout can bring on a depression, especially if it's not, treated properly, if you're not taking good care and you keep pushing on. So at some point your body and mind said enough, no more. So during these 6 months, I knew deep down that the stress had brought on the depression, but I knew that the cause was running much deeper. And I knew if I really didn't want to experience this in the future again, I needed to look deeper and I needed to address whatever it was that was causing all this.
Sure.
So I started therapy, and I also booked my ticket to New Zealand. The good thing that I felt about hitting this rock bottom, because I literally had mornings where I would wake up 4 a.m., couldn't go back to sleep. And I would go on my yoga mat and try to do some asanas, but oftentimes I could just barely do the minimum and would just break down crying. Like that was my yoga practice in the morning, just lying down on my yoga mat crying. And I remember saying in my head, like, I don't remember if I said God or universe, something like that. I said, I need some help. I don't know what to do. And for me, this felt like this moment of just surrender. And I think this is the good thing about hitting rock bottom. You have to surrender in a way. You gotta you got to really let go and say, look, I need some help. I don't know how it's going to look, but something needs to change.
Sure.
So I know I needed to change. And I also had the strong sense that my lifestyle needed to change too. And so after having a good support with, doing therapy, looking a little bit deeper into my past and looking for what was really underlying all of these things, I went with my partner at the time to New Zealand. So we spent a year working and traveling in New Zealand. And I came across a yoga retreat and felt that there was something in yoga that seemed like it could really help me take this to even another level.
Right.
So I decided to stay on and study yoga. I studied yoga in India and Australia.
Wow.
And I lived and worked at this yoga retreat in New Zealand for the years to come. And I was very fortunate to spend time with some very wise souls. And they were basically letting me know and letting me see that my mind had been managing me rather than me managing my mind.
Right.
So I received some really powerful tools that helped me not only manage my mind better, but also my energy, and to just manage my life more wisely as well.
Wow.
And the rest is kind of history. I'm now, as you know, I'm now a coach, and I combine deep coaching with the yoga wisdom, which for me is a really nice combination. And yeah, I get to help my clients create the type of life that they feel excited to wake up to, just as I was hoping for it when I was 8 years old. And I could say that now I'm probably much closer to this dream that the 8-year-old had, to wake up feeling inspired about my day. Maybe not every single morning I wake up inspired, but for most of them, I'm pretty happy going about my day, which hasn't always felt like this. So I'm very glad for the experience. I haven't had any depression since. I'm now capable of just listening to my gut much more than I've ever have. So I see my limitations. I take better care of myself. And yeah, all in all, there's nothing that, some exercise in the morning, maybe a cold shower and a coffee couldn't fix, if I have a morning where I don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. Wow. So yeah, I'm really glad for the more painful experiences, because they really made me to take happiness into my own hands, to say, look, I got to create this for myself. If I don't want to become sort of the victim of my DNA, as I know it's running through my family, or the victim of circumstances, I just got to take this dream of the 8-year-old into my own hands and create the type of life that I feel inspired to wake up to. So yeah, I'm glad for the experience. It's not easy when you're going through it, but looking back, it kind of all makes sense.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's intriguing, people have these depressive sort of moments in their lives, but it was interesting that it's something that runs through your family, and maybe you didn't recognize it to begin with, but your mum, she instantly recognized what was going on. What do you mind me asking what you were studying when you had this the first episode?
Sure. When I had the first episode, I was a teenager, so I was in school, right? Mm-hmm. So the second episode, I was studying social work, and I was writing my thesis in the area of communication. Right. And I had a really good professor who, thank God, immediately realized what was happening when I kind of shared my symptoms with him.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And what was also interesting for me was when I finally, and this is something that I think is so easy to overlook. People on the outside, they seem to be functioning, because I did finish my diploma. I finished with an A, but the outer success, this is the paradox of having this outer success with the inner emptiness.
Right.
And I think oftentimes depression can get not recognized because on the outside people seem to still be functioning, but nobody realizes how much effort it takes them to keep functioning.
Sure, sure. I think depression is one of those things that if you haven't suffered with it, people do find it really hard to sort of empathize with or sympathize with, because it's not, you know, if you cut yourself, there's an obvious pain point, you know, that people can see and verify that you've got an issue, you've cut yourself. But with depression and anxiety and those kind of mental health issues, it's so hard to sort of not, when you're suffering, trying to sort of reach out for help, because you know that you don't look like there's anything wrong with you to the outside world. So there's that sort of, oh, you know, I'm obviously looking fine, so why would anyone think that I need help? And it's this vicious circle with people that suffer. It really is. So, but yoga was the thing for you. Yoga was the thing that you found as your relief and your way of your coping strategy.
The yoga was definitely one of those things, because what I feel yoga can do, I mean, one of the tools that is recommended highly for depression, not only to prevent depression in the first place, but also to manage depression, is exercise, right? But then, of course, it's hard for someone who is going through depression to motivate themselves to exercise. But I can only recommend people who are going through this, they really need to be faster than their mind, so they don't talk themselves out of it, and just put those running shoes on and get running. For me, the difference between, I was also running at the time, just in the morning to get rid of that excess, I don't know what it was, cortisol, adrenaline, to kind of channel it. That was one of the things also my prof was recommending to me. He said, you need to get that out of your system. So go for a run, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning when nobody else is up, but you're wide awake. You have to basically start your day early. So oftentimes sleep is very disrupted in depression, right? So one of the things he recommended to me, which really helped me, was to say, look, you start your day, even if you wake up at 4 a.m., you start your day as if you start your normal day, even though everybody else might still be asleep. So that you're not lying in bed there with all this excess stress, stress response, and your body doesn't know where to go with all this. And so I would then maybe after lunch, would lie down and sleep for an hour or two, just to make up for this, for this long morning that I already had. So yoga, the way yoga helped me differently to, let's say, the exercise, the running in the morning, was that in yoga you really get to use your mind while you're doing the asanas, the postures. So it really brings you into the moment, because one of the troubles with depression is that you are thinking way too much. You have so much going through your head, which is also what is paralyzing you, because you're thinking more than you're wanting to do. So it's more, you're so mental, you're so up in your head. And yoga helps with that, because it does bring you back to the breath. It does bring you back to the body. So it keeps bringing you back into the moment, and in a way learning to manage your thoughts, manage your mind. And this was what I needed to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And so you say that since you've been doing yoga in New Zealand, you haven't had another episode of your depression. You've managed to keep it at bay.
Yeah, I mean, there are these bad days, but like I say, a bad day is different to a depression, right? But overall, I feel I have these tools now, so I know when I get tired, which tool I can use. If I'm really restless, which tool I can use. Oftentimes for me, even it's a walk in nature. Nature is so healing for me personally. And also highly recommended for people going through depression to spend time in nature. And to be honest, what I set out to create in my life, this feeling inspired to wake up to my day, I feel also that having found coaching as my career, as my profession, has tremendously helped with that too. Because I do think that if you love what you do, it's probably one of the best ways to also avoid the depression route. So you actually you're more in alignment with yourself. Because you asked me also earlier what I would recommend for people going through the same or having this experience. And I felt that what helped me also was to reframe depression and see it as a gift as well, because I do think it is a gift, because it sends you a message, and it's up to you to figure out what that message is, what it is you need to change about maybe yourself, your life, your environment, your lifestyle. And for some people, it has a spiritual meaning too. Like for some people, it's been this massive wake-up call to look for something else in life other than what society makes us believe will make us happy or fulfilled, you know, which is maybe the good degree or the career. So, you know, again, external success versus inner happiness. So I had a few good books. I don't recall their names, but they were sort of quite spiritual in nature, dealing with depression in a more spiritual way. And it really helped me, because I started to think, oh, maybe this is a good thing after all, that this is happening, which is hard to see when you're in it. But those books helped too.
Fantastic. That's a really interesting message, that there's a gift in the depression, that if you're willing to look at the depression as sending you a message, that you can then try and find what needs to be adjusted within your life to use your words, to feel more in alignment with them, in line with what you actually should be doing to feel more whole, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know it's something that a lot of people suffer with and don't necessarily feel like they're able to share, because it's like we were talking about earlier, it's such a sort of a hidden issue. So thank you so much for explaining what it was like for you, and it's going to help other people understand either what they're going through or what one of their loved ones is going through. So thank you so much for that. I'm really glad that yoga and the books and the techniques have helped you in the coaching. So I'll share links to your coaching pages and whatnot at the end of the video. But thank you so much for joining me and sharing that.
Thanks, Polly. I hope it helps. I'm very glad to share it. And keep going. It's a great project you're working on.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. If you like this video, do please hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. If you search @BeGlad Movement, you should be able to find us. Please do get in touch if you've got a story that you'd like to share. It doesn't matter if it's something similar to what somebody else has shared, because I really do believe your story, in your voice, in your words, has the ability to help someone in their time of need. So please do get in touch, and I look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.